Usually, when you look at the trajectory of a great leader, there's this expectation of a steady upward climb.
Right, like a neat little graph of progress.
Exactly. You build your team, you rack up some early wins, establish authority, and everything just builds this massive momentum. But then you step into the world of first-century Galilee.
Yeah, specifically looking at Luke chapter 9.
Right, and suddenly that neat little graph looks like the readout of a massive earthquake.
It really does.
So, welcome to the deep dive. As we unpack this incredibly dizzying chapter today, I just want to offer a heartfelt divine blessing for your day and for the entire week ahead. May you find true peace, deep spiritual clarity, and a real sense of purpose in whatever you're facing right now.
I love that. And honestly, it is such a privilege to explore these texts, especially when they challenge our modern assumptions, as much as this specific narrative does.
Yeah, it's a dense one. So our mission here today is to navigate this dramatic landscape packed into just one single chapter.
Just one chapter, yeah.
And to do that, we are pulling insights from the expert study notes of two really comprehensive Portuguese study Bibles.
Right, the Holman and the NAA editions.
Exactly. And what these sources reveal is basically a masterclass in the paradox of leadership.
Oh, absolutely.
Because before Jesus steps into his ultimate fate, he puts his closest friends through this intense crucible.
He deliberately strips away their security, to see if they can rely entirely on him.
And that starts with what feels like, honestly, a massive contradiction.
How so?
Well, Jesus gathers the 12 disciples, and he gives them total power over demons and diseases. Like, they are fully authorized to heal the sick and preach the kingdom.
Right.
But then he gives them a packing list that is entirely empty.
Literally nothing.
Nothing. He strictly forbids them from taking a staff, a travel bag, bread, money, or even an extra shirt.
Yeah, it's wild.
I mean, imagine your boss sending you on the most critical corporate business trip of your career, representing the whole company. But right before you leave for the airport, they confiscate your wallet, your luggage, and your phone.
That'd be terrifying.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Why intentionally make your own team this helpless?
Well, the study notes from both the NAA and Holman editions really emphasize that this enforced helplessness was a vital training period.
Training for what, though?
Well, in the ancient Near East, travelers relied heavily on cultural norms of hospitality. But by stripping the disciples of even the most basic safety nets like a walking stick or a few coins, Jesus forces them to depend 100% on the divine message they're carrying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have to experience what it means to be physically sustained by the mission itself rather than their own resources.
So if they don't lean completely into the authority they were just given, they literally don't eat.
Exactly.
It's like the ultimate sink or swim management style.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is if you look at what happens immediately after they return, that lesson in total dependence gets scaled up astronomically.
Oh, right. The feeding of the 5,000.
Yeah. They come back from this mission. They're probably exhausted but exhilarated, and they just want to find a quiet place near Bethsaida to debrief.
But the crowds track them down.
Of course they do.
And the sources note this wasn't just a small gathering. We're talking about 5,000 men.
Right.
So when you factor in women and children, you are likely looking at a crowd of around 15,000 people.
That's the size of a small town.
Out in a deserted area, the day is ending, and the disciples panic.
Understandably.
Yeah. They tell Jesus to send everyone away so the crowds can go buy their own food in the surrounding villages.
But Jesus flips the script again.
He does.
He tells the disciples, you give them something to eat?
With 5 loaves and 2 fish for 15,000 people.
It's an impossible math problem. But Jesus organizes the chaos. He has them sit in groups of 50. He looks to heaven, blesses the meager food, and breaks it.
And everyone eats.
Everyone. And the Holman notes specifically point out that this miracle deliberately echoes the ancient Israelites receiving manna in the wilderness.
Oh, I see the connection.
Right. It's a massive, undeniable proof that Jesus, not their empty pockets, not their lack of a travel bag, is their ultimate provider.
So they started their mission learning they had nothing, and they ended it watching Jesus multiply next to nothing into an absolute feast.
Exactly.
They even collected 12 baskets of leftovers, right? One for each of the 12 disciples who had left their own bread at home.
Such a brilliant, tangible lesson.
It really is. But I imagine it also acts as a massive catalyst. I mean, a public miracle of that magnitude feeding a small city out in the wilderness naturally sets off an absolute frenzy of speculation.
Oh, completely. The crowds And crucially, the local authorities are wildly speculating about who Jesus actually is.
And the sources bring up Herod the Tetrarch here, right?
Yes, Herod Antipas.
He's the guy who recently executed John the Baptist, and his guilty conscience is just working overtime.
To understand Herod's panic here, you have to realize what a tetrarch actually was.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in the Roman Empire, a tetrarch was essentially a subordinate ruler governing a fourth of a province. Herod was a client king.
So he didn't have absolute power.
No, not at all. He was deeply insecure, constantly trying to appease Rome while keeping a lid on a very volatile Jewish population.
That makes sense.
So hearing about a man who can conjure food for 15,000 people, a man who could easily fund and feed a massive rebel army that would send his political paranoia into overdrive.
Because the rumors are flying around him.
Right.
Some say John the Baptist has been resurrected. Others say it's the ancient prophet Elijah, who Jewish tradition said would return before the end times.
Everyone has a theory.
Exactly. So Jesus pulls his disciples aside, privately away from the crowds, and he asks them the ultimate question: who do the crowds say that I am?
And they give him the rundown of all the rumors.
Right. But then he makes it personal. He says, but who do you say that I am? And Peter steps up and declares, the Christ of God.
Which is huge. Christ is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Messiah, the Anointed One.
So what does this all mean?
Well, Peter's officially stating that Jesus is the long-awaited deliverer of Israel.
Okay, but here is where I get completely lost.
Why is that?
Because Peter nails the ultimate answer, right? He identifies Jesus as the Messiah. But instead of celebrating this massive breakthrough, Jesus immediately gags them.
He tells them to keep it a secret.
Yes, and then he drops this incredibly dark prediction about his own death. Why the Son's secrecy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the secrecy is necessary because Peter's definition of Messiah and Jesus' definition are completely at odds.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the Jewish people at that time, who were groaning under Roman occupation, they expected a military and political savior.
They wanted a general.
Exactly. They wanted a warrior king who would march into Jerusalem, crush the Romans, and restore the throne of David. If Jesus let them broadcast that he was the Messiah, it would ignite a massive, violent political revolt.
Which explains why Jesus immediately has to shatter that expectation.
Right away.
He tells them the Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the religious leaders, be killed, and on the third day be raised.
And to them, a dead Messiah is a failed Messiah.
Totally.
To understand the weight of this prediction, the study notes highlight a very specific Greek word used here. Dei, D-E-I.
Dei.
It translates to "it is necessary" or "it must be." It signifies a divine decree.
So he's saying his suffering isn't an accident.
Exactly. Jesus is saying his suffering and death aren't a tragic mistake. It's not a failure of the mission. It is the mission.
Wow.
He isn't going to defeat Rome. He's going to defeat sin and death. And the only way to accomplish that is through his own execution.
That is so heavy. And because the Messiah must suffer, the definition of what it means to be a follower completely shifts.
It has to.
Jesus issues this incredibly stark demand. He says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me.
That's a brutal image for them.
It really is. I mean, when you hear the word cross today, you might think of a piece of jewelry or, a symbol on a church painting.
Right, it's sanitized.
Exactly. But you have to remember that in the first century, a cross was the Roman Empire's most agonizing, terrifying, and humiliating form of public execution.
It was an instrument of state terror.
Designed to strip a person of all dignity. Taking it up wasn't about enduring a minor inconvenience like getting stuck in traffic. It meant total daily self-sacrifice. It meant the absolute death of your worldly ambitions and your ego.
Jesus is essentially asking them to sign their own death warrants.
Yeah.
He says, whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. It is a terrifying concept for the disciples to grasp.
So how do they keep going after hearing that?
Well, to prove to them that this agonizing cost is actually worth paying, Jesus immediately has to show them a glimpse of the ultimate glory.
Right. Let's look at what happens about 8 days later to provide that proof.
The transfiguration.
Yes. Jesus takes Peter, John, and James up a mountain to pray. And as he's praying, the sources describe this profound transfiguration. His face changes, and his clothes become dazzlingly bright like a flash of lightning.
And he isn't alone.
No. Moses and Elijah appear in glory alongside him.
The pairing of Moses and Elijah is hugely symbolic here.
How so?
Well, Moses represents the law, the foundational covenant of Israel. Elijah represents the prophets, the long history of God's messengers.
So they represent the entire Old Testament.
Exactly. Their presence validates Jesus. He's the fulfillment of everything the Old Testament anticipated.
And the study notes bring out a really fascinating detail about their conversation on that mountain.
Yes, this is crucial.
They are talking about Jesus' impending departure, which he is about to accomplish at Jerusalem. But the Greek word used for departure is exodos.
Exodus. Just as Moses led the exodus of the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, Jesus is about to lead the ultimate exodus.
Delivering humanity from the slavery of sin and death.
Exactly. Through his crucifixion and resurrection in Jerusalem, he is the new, greater Moses, leading a new, greater liberation.
But Peter, he wakes up, sees this divine majesty, and completely misreads the room.
He really does.
He says, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents or tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah."
The notes from the NWA and Holman Bibles point out why this is such a fundamental error.
I mean, he was probably just terrified and babbling.
He was terrified and confused, yeah. But his suggestion to build 3 equal shelters shows he still fundamentally misunderstands Jesus' unique supremacy.
Oh, because he's putting them all on the same level.
Right. By putting up 3 tents, he's treating Jesus as merely an equal to the great ancient prophets. He's trying to categorize Jesus within his existing religious framework.
But then a voice comes out of a cloud that overshadows them, which is a clear symbol of the divine presence and sets the record straight.
God the Father speaks.
He declares, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." And when the voice speaks, Moses and Elijah are gone. Only Jesus remains.
He's not just another prophet.
No, he is the supreme Son of God. The law and the prophets point to him, and now he stands alone.
It is the ultimate visual validation of everything Jesus claimed.
That has to be the ultimate spiritual high.
You'd think so?
But Jesus doesn't let them build those tents and stay on the mountain.
No, they have to come down.
And the very next day, they come down, and here's where it gets really interesting. They crash immediately back into the messy, painful valley of human reality.
It's a stark contrast.
A man rushes up from a massive crowd, begging Jesus to look at his only son. The boy is possessed by an evil spirit that suddenly seizes him, throws him into convulsions, and shatters him.
It's heartbreaking.
And the father says the most heartbreaking thing. "I beg your disciples to cast it out, but they could not."
Jesus laments the situation, calling them a faithless and twisted generation.
Which is pretty hard.
But remember, earlier in this very same chapter, Jesus gave these disciples power and authority over all demons.
Oh, right, when he sent them out with no luggage.
Exactly. Their inability to heal this boy points to a lack of faith, a sudden disconnect from the power source they had relied on when they were sent out with empty pockets.
Wow. But Jesus rebukes the spirit and heals the boy instantly, returning him to his father.
And everyone is marveling at the majesty of God.
But Jesus pulls his disciples aside again, and he tells them, "Let these words sink into your ears. The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men."
He's predicting his brutal death for the second time.
Yeah, and the word used for delivered implies betrayal. But the text says the disciples didn't understand it. It was concealed from them, and they were too afraid to ask him what it meant.
And their lack of understanding immediately manifests in the most baffling way possible.
It really does. Right after Jesus talks about his impending torture and death, they start arguing about which one of them is the greatest.
This raises an important question about human nature. I mean, they have just seen absolute divine majesty on the mountain. They've been warned of intense suffering, yet their minds immediately revert to status, ego, and worldly hierarchies.
They're operating like executives fighting for a corner office in a corporate boardroom.
Not citizens of the kingdom of heaven.
Not at all. So Jesus takes a child, puts the child by his side, and tells them that whoever receives this child in his name receives him. For he who is least among you all is the one who is great.
Which is radical. In the first century Roman and Jewish world, a child had zero status, zero power, and no rights.
So by placing the child beside him, Jesus is fundamentally redefining greatness.
True greatness requires radical humility and welcoming those who can offer you absolutely no social advancement.
But the disciples' ego trip mutates into straight-up tribalism right after this.
Oh, yes. John speaks up.
Yeah, John says, "Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he does not follow with us."
John expects a pat on the back for protecting the brand.
But Jesus rebukes him.
He says, "Do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you."
The disciples were more concerned about preserving their exclusive inner circle status than they were about a person actually being freed from a demon.
It's all about tribalism for them.
And that tribalism peaks just a few verses later. The text says the days drew near for Jesus to be taken up, referring to his ascension, his death, resurrection, the whole process.
He resolutely sets his face to go to Jerusalem.
They travel through Samaria, and he sends messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival.
Now, the sources emphasize the deep historical, ethnic, and religious animosity between Jews and Samaritans here.
They absolutely despised each other.
They did. The Samaritans had their own temple site on Mount Gerizim, and they rejected the Jewish focus on Jerusalem.
So when this Samaritan village realizes Jesus is heading firmly toward Jerusalem, they refuse to welcome him.
They shut him out completely.
And James and John, who were famously nicknamed Sons of Thunder because of their hot tempers, they see this rejection, and they turn to Jesus and ask, "Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them?"
They want to literally call down an airstrike on the village.
It's insane.
They're thinking of Elijah, who called down fire on his enemies in the Old Testament. They feel justified in their desire for violent vengeance because of the insult to Jesus.
But Jesus turns and harshly rebukes them. He didn't come to destroy lives, but to save them. So they simply move on to another village.
Within the span of a few days, the disciples go from seeing glowing ancient prophets on a mountain to acting like bickering, status-obsessed toddlers who want to burn a village to the ground.
That is quite the fall from grace.
This sequence reveals how deeply entrenched our worldly values of power, exclusivity, and retaliation really are.
And Jesus has to systematically dismantle all of those assumptions before they are ready to follow him to the cross.
Exactly. Which sets the stage for the final segment of this chapter.
Right. Jesus has shattered their false expectations of a military Messiah. He has confronted their egos, and now he lays out the absolute, uncompromising terms of following him on this final road to Jerusalem.
The study sources highlight 3 specific interactions with would-be followers on the road.
And each one tests a different aspect of human attachment.
Yes. The first guy comes up and says, "I will follow you wherever you go."
Sounds great.
But Jesus responds, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head."
He's warning him about total insecurity.
Right. To follow him means leaving behind the guarantee of physical comfort and a permanent home. He's testing if the man is ready for a life of radical, unpredictable dependence.
Then we get to the second interaction. Jesus says to a man, "Follow me." The man says, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father."
And Jesus replies, "Leave the dead to bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God."
Okay, I have to push back on this.
Go ahead.
Isn't Jesus being incredibly harsh here? I mean, asking to attend your dad's funeral seems like the most reasonable, basic human request in the world.
It absolutely does, to our modern ears. But the study Bibles provide crucial cultural context here that completely changes the narrative.
Okay, tell me more.
In first-century Judaism, burial was a 2-step process. When a person died, they were buried in a cave or a family tomb on the same day.
Right.
But then the family waited an entire year for the flesh to decompose. After a year, the son would return, gather the bones, and place them in a stone box called an ossuary. This was known as the secondary burial.
Wait, really? So his father might not even be dead yet?
Possibly. Or if he was, the man was asking for a year-long delay to finish this cultural process.
The man is essentially saying, "I will follow you, but let me stay home and fulfill my long-term familial and cultural obligations first. I'll join you in a year or so when my life is neatly settled."
Exactly. So when Jesus says, "Leave the dead to bury their own dead," he's using a spiritually sharp metaphor.
He means, let the spiritually dead, those who are not awake to the urgency of the kingdom, handle these worldly affairs.
The mission is simply too critical to wait for a convenient time.
That changes the dynamic completely. It isn't about missing a funeral this afternoon. It's about putting God's call on hold for cultural comfort.
Precisely. And then another man approaches and says, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home."
And Jesus gives him the famous plow analogy. No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God.
Think about a farmer plowing a field. He has to keep his eyes fixed straight ahead on a point in the distance to make a straight furrow.
If he keeps turning his head to look behind him, the line becomes crooked and the work is ruined.
Jesus is saying that dwelling on past comforts or looking back with longing at the life you left behind divides your attention.
The kingdom of God requires an undivided, forward-looking commitment.
You cannot follow Jesus toward Jerusalem if your heart is constantly pulling you back to your old living room.
It's an uncompromising end to the chapter. Jesus systematically dismantles their physical safety nets, their egos, and finally their cultural attachments.
He reveals that following him isn't a casual stroll.
No, it's a profound, demanding journey that requires you to drop every single one of your safety nets.
The demand is absolute because the stakes are absolute.
And that leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to mull over. We saw that Jesus decisively set his face toward Jerusalem, fully knowing the agonizing suffering and the cross that awaited him there, because it was a divine necessity.
Right.
So what Jerusalem are you avoiding in your own life because the cost feels too high? And when you grip your current plow, are you moving forward with resolute focus, or are you constantly looking back at the comforts you were asked to leave behind?
Those are the heavy questions Luke 9 forces us to confront.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. As we wrap up today, we want to say goodbye by reminding you that God blesses all the listeners. We truly wish you a wonderful, purposeful week ahead. Until next time.